That we apologize for the inconvenience, but due to a technical error, Charter will not be able to broadcast sound for the City Council meeting tonight at 4:30 p.m. However, the City of Casper on YouTube.com will have the broadcast and sound for those that can hear me. All right, so before we begin this evening, I'd like to remind everyone to silence your cell phones at this time, and I now call the December 22nd, 2020 special council meeting to order. Council, and you can't denote your presence, but it looks like everybody's here. And is Councilwoman Lutz on the line? I think she is.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. All right. So it looks like all council members are present. So would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Council will now discuss the resolution for the temporary liquor license drive-up. Because this is not on the consent agenda, it will be open for discussion by council. Please read the resolution by title only.
A resolution authorizing certain City of Casper liquor license holders to utilize the public street adjacent to the licensed premises to be used as a drive-up in response to the 18th continuation and modification of statewide Public Health Order Number 1 regarding bars, restaurants, theaters, and gymnasiums, childcare facilities, K through 12 schools, colleges, universities, and trade schools, and continuations thereof.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve the resolution just read.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Cathy, second by Councilman Johnson. Mr. City Manager, do you have a report?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, good evening. This is the opportunity that council has to consider to allow for a rather unique conveyance of alcohol products during the time that the health order of December 7th is in existence. Throughout that period of time, we are proposing, by virtue of this resolution, if it should pass, that sidewalks and alleys would be allowed to convey and exchange or transact, if you will, alcohol products, so long as the recipient of those products is outside of their POV, their vehicle. And so, for example, an individual could come up to a curb, receive an alcohol product, pay for that, and then get back in the car and drive away, so long as the product itself meets certain specifications that the resolution identifies. And so with that, Mr. Mayor, if there are any questions, the attorney had incredible work in this to make it happen, and I'd probably want to defer to him for most of the technicalities.
Mr. City Manager, or I'm sorry, Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, just a couple of things. One is that because this is basically in response to the public health order that deals with COVID, you know, the fact that we have people being delivered liquor outside the premises as opposed to inside the premises is probably a good health result in and of itself. And so there was that, I think, consideration that went into this. Basically, the other fact is that we understand that this will impact the liquor license holders' revenues. And particularly here during, I think, the holiday season, there's likely to be more revenue that would be generated during that.
Because this is not on the consent agenda, it will be open for discussion by council. Please read the resolution by title only.
A resolution authorizing a debt workout agreement between the City of Casper and the Downtown Development Authority.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve the resolution just read.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, second by Councilman Powell. Mr. City Manager, do you have a report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pursuant to the direction of the council from the previous time that we discussed this, we've been working with the DDA to come up with an MOU that would line out the ways in which the outstanding balance of roughly $148,000 could be diminished and paid, if you will, to back to the city. Pursuant to a lot of the work here in the attorney's office, we think we have a proposal that we'd like you to consider, and pending your direction or questions this evening, we would be prepared to then execute that agreement and move forward and hopefully mitigate that outstanding balance. If I could defer to the attorney for the specific tenets, I'd appreciate that, please.
Okay, Mr. Henley.
Thank you, Mayor, City Manager. Basically, this results from property transfers, and there are quite a few of them that went into place and were consummated when the David Street Station was built. And they were trying to exchange properties to get a big enough parcel of land and to make sure that there was adequate parking to the extent that there is the available flat space available down at the David Street Station area. Part of that was to get some property. The state office building had to be modified, and the state then needed to have a place to move their people, which, as it turns out, the Linhart Mason accounting firm was just getting ready to move to their new offices out by the planetarium. And so, as it turned out, the city and Downtown Development Association got together to figure out how to make this all come together. And the city took title to the Mason Linhart or Linhart Mason properties, and the DDA was going to then lease the property from the city and then sublease it to the state of Wyoming. And all of that happened, and things seem to be progressing pretty well. The first 2 years, lease payments were made. In 2018, I think DDA had some significant difficulties in paying that, and the state of Wyoming came in and paid all of 2018 as well as a good part of 2019's lease payments. And then since then, DDA has paid, I think, maybe $2,500 payments. And as a result of that, there would be a balance still owing on the primary lease of $148,639.89. So when Mr. Hawley was in here a couple of weeks ago trying to approach you on getting this to be written off or worked out. The council had some questions. There seemed to be kind of a general interest in trying to help the DDA and trying to make sure that they're able to continue their function, and something that we've all enjoyed and would like to enjoy into the future. But at the same time, the council's comments, as I recall, particularly from a couple of councilmen who seemed to kind of have would like to help but didn't feel comfortable until there was some more plan for the Downtown Development Authority to gain additional revenue so that they could self-maintain. This particular proposal would not put any money back into the city's pockets right now. So if the David Street Station people were able to raise $60,000, they would keep that full $60,000, but they would be able to diminish their debt to the city by $30,000. So the thought process would be, look, they don't have the money right now, and really, as best we can tell, in the foreseeable future to pay off this debt. So how can we help them and maybe help ourselves and the city citizens? And so we thought, how about we let them try to use this to multiply the their ability to fundraise by saying, hey, look, if we can have you, Mr. Contributor, help us out, we will not only get the money that you give us, and we can use that for programming, not to pay the city off, but we will also be able to diminish our debt by half the amount that you pay us. So the thought process would be that if they were to go through this and have it all paid off, they would accumulate about $300,000 to put into their bank account for future operations, and we would be able to have this written off, and we would then be able to continue to lease this, which we're going to be coming in, the end of the lease happens next month anyway. So the thought process again would be, one, end of the year giving time, so we wanted to maybe expedite this so that this goes into the place. They could go make their pitches to some of their larger donors. And so it affects mostly, and the thought process was originally kind of donors, but it would apply to sponsorships as well, things of that nature, but not to things like beer sales. That wouldn't be part of what the match would be. It would have to be newly generated sponsorships, donations, that type of thing. And so that's the thought process, and it's really just kind of in your corner as to whether or not that's sufficient, along with their plan that they explained a couple of weeks ago about the foundation being established, so that you feel comfortable that they're going to be able to self-maintain now and not have to come back here, and they can basically continue their operation without coming to the city council.
Okay, discussion? Councilman Powell.
Mr. Henley, in your conversations with Mr. Reese, how did you arrive at this arrangement, this 2-to-1 arrangement? I'm just curious as to why you wouldn't have thought just 50-50 would be fair.
You know, we talked about that, and we went from everything from potentially one-on-one to up to maybe 3 times. You know, the more they could get, the better off they would be. And this is, you know, one of those, I assume, rare times that you actually can say, look, we have a real debt. This isn't just some type of a fake, we have somebody who's going to match your gift. No, you have a real debt here, and we can actually reduce that. And so every dollar we get is not going to go from you, donor, to us, DDA, to the city to pay off that debt. It's going to go from you to us. We get 100% of whatever you give us, and then we get a 50% to diminishment as well. So as far as the amount, we had talked primarily in the area of the 2-to-1 match, Councilman Powell. At the end of the initial negotiation, we thought that's where it was going, and it turned out we had some other ideas in mind, but it just didn't come together very well. And so we ended up doing this after some further negotiation, and really the last 10 yards of the agreement, I was working with Mr. Reese, and he was helpful, and I'd met telephonically with Mr. Hawley and Mr. Reese, as well as Nick. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting Nick's name, the accountant, and Mr. Reese. And so we had some good conversations, and I thought that they were pretty much on board with it, and I was hoping that they would be, so that at least give you the opportunity. And they haven't approved it as a board, but Mr. Reese felt that the board was certainly leaning strongly that way when we last talked.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Bates.
Was the 2019 and 18 that the state paid for the lease, was it, they couldn't pay for it, so the state stepped in, is that correct?
You know, it's my understanding that there was some difficulty at that point, and the state was approached, and the state then did come back in and pay for it.
Okay.
It didn't pass through the DDA.
Okay, and then we're in 2020 for that. Is the lease, just from my understanding, is the lease for the David Street Station or for the other?
This is for the old Linhart Mason Accounting Building, kind of right across the street here. Yeah.
Right, okay. Okay, just keeping everything separate and straight. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councilman Powell.
I'll speak in favor of this, Mr. Mayor. And as you all know, I'm supportive of the DDA's efforts. And I guess I would like to point out, while we're talking about the DDA's indebtedness to the city, it is in fact the city that is indebted to the DDA. As I pointed out last time, the city contributed $3 million toward the building of the David Street Station, an asset that is worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $9 million now, and that is in the hands of the city, which is 3 times what we contributed. The same holds true with the Ash Street building, where the city purchased it, not for this, by the way, arrangement. That decision was made prior because of a longstanding policy by the city to expand its campus when opportunities presented, because this building, as most people know, is far too small for city operations. This was prior to the remodeling plans that have since been proposed. And so that purchase was not for this purpose, it just happened to occur prior to this need for state office building space. In the process, I would again point out that the DDA has paid to the city approximately 40% of the value of the purchase price for the building itself, which has come back to the public, and again paid a good part of the cost, plus did extensive remodeling to upgrade the value of the building. And so now the city has this asset that it could use, could liquidate to help with the remodeling of this building if we so chose. And that asset is worth far more than the city has into it now because of the rental, the payments that have been made and those increases in value with that remodeling project. So the DDA has done great service to the city in building the station, which was not easy, and which the public has enjoyed thoroughly, and has also enhanced the city's financial status by defraying the cost of that purchase of that building and remodeling it. So this arrangement, to me, is generous for the city because we are going to retire this obligation. But again, it is a relatively small amount compared to the value that the DDA has provided to the city in terms of the asset, the Davis Street Station asset, and the value of that Ash Street building. So I will speak in favor of this. I actually think, well, obviously I spoke in favor of retiring the debt entirely last time this came up, and I still believe that's the appropriate stance, but this is certainly a good opportunity to at least provide something in response to their efforts. Thank you.
Councilman Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a good option. It sounds to me like it's going to benefit the city and benefit downtown development. And I don't see any reason not to support this at this point.
Councilman Pacheco.
Yeah, I'll come in. I obviously was in favor of retiring the debt like Charlie, but fully support this as well. And I think we got to understand too that the DDA does a lot for our community, does a lot for the downtown, and so we need to be making sure that we're continuing to support the work that they're doing from a council standpoint. And so we're going to continue to do that. I think into the new year, we're going to really have to work with that. And so I want them to understand that they continue to have the support from this council member anyway, making sure that they know that someone on the council has their back when we're working forward. So I'll support this measure to help them move forward.
Any further discussion? Vice Mayor Lutz, did you have something?
I was just going to say that I had read through everything, and as you guys know, I had a lot of questions from just a longevity standpoint, and I'm happy with this agreement.
Okay. Any further discussion? Any amendments? Any abstention or nay votes? All voting aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
Okay. Notice of an executive session to take place at this date and during this meeting was given. We have a matter to discuss regarding personnel. Therefore, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session, and at the conclusion of that executive session, reconvene as regular meeting solely for the purposes of adjournment of the regular meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Pacheco, second by Councilman Johnson. There being a majority of members present and a motion to adjourn into executive session having been moved and seconded, and that motion requiring a 2/3 majority of the council present. Any abstention or nay votes? All voting aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
A greater than 2/3 majority of the council present voted in favor of the motion. We are hereby adjourned into an executive session.
Hey, thank you all for coming.
Thank you.